In this video I am going to talk about how to create a Fedora and Ubuntu encrypted dual boot that shares the same user account. To make things easier, I'm going to do 99% of the tasks in graphical user interface only, without needing to touch a command line interface. I am currently dual booting Ubuntu 22.04, for work and personally, and Windows 11, for occasional gaming, on my main laptop. I used the excellent tutorial by Mike Kasberg to make the Ubuntu portion of the disk encrypted, and it is working butter smooth for a long time. I will include a link to that blog post in the description. I still have my old laptop with me and thought that I should try Fedora on it, as I have been meaning to give it a test run for a very long time. One pain point in the Mike's post linked above is that it has a lot of CLI chores to do when it comes to creating the encrypted LVN volume group. While I am perfectly comfortable doing all of those in a CLI, I also know that a GUI makes it all the more easier and accessible to a larger set of people. A good thing about Fedora is that it comes with a cool storage management tool called Blivet GUI, that can manage partitions like gparted, and also can manage LVN volume groups and logical volumes. Those things are used to make the OS installations encrypted. That makes the whole process very easy, and we don't have to do any CLI setup in Fedora install, and only have to do a minimal CLI task at the end of the Ubuntu install. Although very small, you must do that part, as otherwise, you won't be able to boot into the Ubuntu installation. If you missed it, however, you can simply boot back into a Ubuntu Live USB environment, and do what you forgot to do the first time. You just have to remember where you installed things, like what partition you allocated for root, boot, and home mount points. So, without further ado, let's jump right into the process, starting with installing Fedora. I am assuming you have bootable installation media for both Ubuntu and Fedora at this point. I am also assuming that you are using a completely empty storage medium, though even if you are not, you should be able to follow the instructions on the free space you have left. First, let's boot into the Fedora Live environment. Once you have booted into the Fedora Live environment, start the installer. After selecting the language to be used during the installation process, you will be asked to select installation destination. From there, select the disk you want to install the operating system, and under Storage Configuration, select Advanced Custom, Blivet GUI, option and click the Done button in the window header. Next you will be taken to the Blivet GUI partitioning step. I am using a 240 GB disk for this example, and I will partition it as follows. First, create an EFI partition with 1 GB space. Set label EFI and mount point /boot/EFI. Next create a LVN volume group. Be sure to leave at least 10 GB of disk space free, as we would need it for the boot partitions of Ubuntu and Fedora. Select the matching device type and enter VG as the name, check the Encrypt checkbox. Enter a passphrase and confirm it by repeating it in the Repeat Passphrase text box. Now select the remaining free space, and click the plus button. Select partition for device type, 5 GB for size, ext4 as the file system, boot_Fedora as the label, and set /boot as the mount point. After that, click VG under the LVM section in the left sidebar. Click the plus button to create a logical volume. Set 30 GB as the size. Leave ext4 for the file system. Set Fedora as the label. Use Fedora as the name too, but the letter F should be simple in this case. The mount point should be root, which is denoted by a /. Select the remaining free space, and click the plus button again. Set 30 GB for the size. ext4 for file system. Ubuntu for both label and name, but name should be all simple. Set no mount point in this instance, just leave it empty. Next we'll make the swap volume. 1 GB for size, swap as the file system, label, and name. Now let's make the home volume. Select the empty space and click the plus button. Size should be 60 GB this time. ext4 for file system. Enter home for both label and name. The mount point should be /home. Now it's time to recheck that we created the correct partitions and volumes and assigned them to mount points properly. Click the Done button in the window header when you confirm that everything is in order. Then you will be presented with a summary of changes window, and you can verify it and click Accept Changes. Doing that will bring you to the installation summary step, and you can now click the Begin Installation button at the bottom right hand side. And with that, Fedora installer will start installing the OS onto our disk. Once the installer is done with its tasks, it will allow you to click the Finish Installation button to exit from the installer. After that, you should restart the machine and boot from the copy of Fedora installed on your disk, not the installation medium. Turning off the machine and removing the installation medium before starting it again can help you with that. If our configuration of encryption is successful, Fedora should ask you to provide a password before it even completes booting up. This is not your user account's password it is asking for. In fact, as we're in the first startup right now, we haven't even created a user account yet. You should type in the encryption passphrase you specified when you created the LVM2 volume group at the start of our installation process. After you successfully provided the encryption passphrase to decrypt the file system, Fedora will start up and present you with the first launch setup wizard. We will use the same username in both Fedora and Ubuntu to enable home directory sharing. So pay special attention to the username you specify here, as you would have to enter exactly the same when you install Ubuntu later. However, you do not have to use the same password in both operating systems. You can use same or different passwords for the same user under the two operating systems. Once that is done, you'll log into the Fedora desktop. You can use the disks program to check whether the partitions and mount points you specified during the installation have been correctly used. When you are happy with your Fedora installation, restart it and boot with your Ubuntu installation medium plugged into your computer, so that we can start installing Ubuntu. When given the option, click Try Ubuntu button. We have to decrypt the encrypted LVM volume group we created from the Fedora Live environment before we can install Ubuntu on some of the logical volumes within that volume group. To be able to do that, we should log into the Ubuntu Live environment and use the disk program to unlock the volume group. Select the encrypted volume and click the Unlock button that looks like an open padlock. When asked, enter the passphrase you set when you created the LVM volume group from Fedora Live environment. Once the LVM volume group is unlocked, you can begin the Ubuntu installation process. In the installation type screen, you must select the Something Else option. Then we will be able to manually select the partitions and logical volumes we want to use for each of our mount points. For the Ubuntu boot partition, select the free space after the Fedora boot partition, and create a new partition with a size of 5 GB. Ubuntu installer will show sizes in MB. The labels we assign to partitions and logical volumes will help you identify what's what. Enter the following particulars for Ubuntu boot partition: size, around 5000 MB, type of the new partition, primary, location of the new partition, beginning of this space, use as, ext4 journaling file system, mount point, /boot. For home mount point, select the /dev/mapper/vg home option with the ext4 type and click the change button. In the edit partition pop-up, make the following choices, use as, ext4 journaling file system, format the partition, uncheck. Unchecking this is very important, as Ubuntu is sharing this home logical volume with Fedora. We do not want to format it, mount point, /home. For the Ubuntu root mount point, select the /dev/mapper/vg Ubuntu option with the ext4 type and click the change button. In the edit partition pop-up, make the following choices, use as, ext4 journaling file system, format the partition, check. This time we want Ubuntu to format this logical volume as it sees fit. Ubuntu installer won't proceed without us checking this, mount point, /. Now that we have selected partitions and logical volumes for Ubuntu's root, boot, and home, we can click the Install Now button. It will ask you to confirm the changes, and you should click Continue. Important. When it's time to set a username, set exactly the same username as you set with Fedora. This will lead to both operating systems sharing the same user home directory. This is very important to share the same user and in some cases, same applications between the two operating systems. Now we have to wait till Ubuntu installer finishes installing the Ubuntu operating system onto your computer. Important. When the Ubuntu installer is done doing its job, we must click Continue Testing, as there's a little bit more work we have to do manually. This is the 1% CLI task I mentioned earlier, but fear not, it's very easy. First, open the Disks tool, identify the Ubuntu boot partition, and let's set a label for that. To do that, select the Ubuntu boot partition, and click the cogwheel button and select Edit File System option. In the next pop-up window, enter boot_Ubuntu as the label and click the Change button. Also take note of the device name here, which is /dev/sda4 as we will need it later. Note that the device name might be different in your installation, so take note of your Ubuntu boot partition's device name. Then open a terminal window and issue the command ls/dev/mapper. It will produce an output like this. Now open a new tab in your terminal window, and issue the following commands. sudo-i, we switch to root user. Mount /dev/mapper/vg-ubuntu/target, we mount Ubuntu root logical volume to /target. Mount /dev/sda4/target/boot, we mount Ubuntu boot partition to /target/boot. We took note of /dev/sda4 device name earlier. For n in proc sysdev etc /resolve.conf semicolon do mount -r bind $n target $and semicolon done, we mount files and directories named proc, sys, dev, and etc /resolve.conf inside the Ubuntu Live environment's root directory to matching mount points inside /target. chroot/target, we change the apparent root to /target. Mount-a, we mount all file systems mentioned in Fedora. Now, inside the chroot environment, we create a file named Crypttab in /etc directory. Into it, copy the long name we noted when we issued the ls/dev/mapper command earlier. After that, enter a space and UUID equals followed by the same long name, but without the luks- prefix. At the end, we add the text none space luks comma discard. The long text here is actually the UUID of the partition we used for the LVN volume group. We can verify that the correct content was added to the /etc/crypttab file by running cat command on it. Now we have to issue the following final command, update init ram fs-kal-c. We can finally exit from the chroot environment, and reboot the computer. You can now use your machine's UEFI boot menu, or each operating system's grub menu to switch between the operating systems. If one operating system's grub menu doesn't show the other operating system, just log into the operating system that has the problem, mount the other operating system's root logical volume, and update grub. This process can vary between Fedora and Ubuntu, and I don't hope to get into that in this guide. After restarting, go to Fedora, and let's do a trick to make sure the two operating systems are sharing the same user. Open the user's home folder, and the desktop folder in it. Create a text file in it, and add any recognizable text you'd like and save it. Now restart to exit from Fedora. And choose to start Ubuntu. You will have to enter the passphrase you selected when we began this process to boot into Ubuntu. This is great, as both Ubuntu and Fedora are encrypted on your machine, and your data are secure inside the LVM volume group. Once you are inside Ubuntu, check your desktop to see a message from Fedora. You can even type a reply. If you'd like, log back into Fedora to see the reply too. We have now successfully set up Ubuntu and Fedora inside an encrypted LVN volume group, and we are sharing the same user home directory between the two operating systems. Thank you very much for watching this guide, and I would love to know what you think about this. There are some cool stuff you can do with this setup, like running the same binary of an application using Flatpaks, or we can share same GNOME extensions in both operating systems.